Alright, so starting on page 282, the chapter then begins to talk about garden path sentences. These are sentences that are written ambiguously, such that, as the name suggests, you are taken down a garden path, and partway through the sentence you realize that your understanding, the way you're processing the sentence, is not how the author of the sentence intended you to process it. So you have to go back to earlier in the sentence and figure out where the ambiguity arose, so that you can see where your confusion arose from. Oftentimes we find that garden path sentences are caused by a reduced relative clause. Now, in order to understand what that means, let's skip ahead to page 284. On the bottom right-hand corner of the page, you can see a relative clause is described. A relative clause is a phrase that is a little bit that is modifying a noun phrase. So there's some examples there. The boy who stalked the prom queen has been caught. And the part that's in bold, who stalked the prom queen, that's the relative clause, because it's modifying the noun phrase that came just before it, the boy. So what's something about the boy? Well, he's the one who stalked the prom queen, right? So it's telling us a little bit about that noun phrase. Now, sometimes a relative clause can be reduced, meaning that the pronoun who or that can be removed from the sentence. In the first sentence, the boy who stalked the prom queen has been caught. You couldn't remove who because it wouldn't make sense anymore at all. It wouldn't be even a garden path sentence. It just would be an ungrammatical sentence. But in the second case, the discovery that Copernicus made was controversial. You could remove the word that in order to make a reduced relative clause. And the sentence would say, the discovery Copernicus made was controversial. We often do that, actually. We remove the word that pretty frequently in our speaking. The problem is, sometimes those reduced relative clauses can result in confusion about what the author of the sentence intended. So oftentimes it's better to include the word that as part of a relative clause so that it reduces that ambiguity. But sometimes when you're reading somebody else's work and the word that or who has been removed, then the sentence might not make a lot of sense on your first pass. An example of a garden path sentence here on page 282 is, the horse raced past the barn fell. And on first reading you say, what? That doesn't make any sense. But here, raced is a verb that could be used in a couple of different ways. One way that the word raced could be used is that the horse is doing it itself. But it could also be used in a way to refer to something that's being done to the horse. And that's how the author of this sentence intended it. The author of the sentence intended to mean that the horse was being raced past the barn. And the horse that was being raced past the barn by its master is the horse that fell, right? So, that's what the sentence is trying to communicate, but it doesn't sound like that. It sounds like the horse is racing autonomously on its own past the barn, and then there's this strange word at the end attached on, fell, and that doesn't make sense. So you can see then that that the nature of a garden path sentence is illustrated by that example, and that's probably the quintessential example that you'll see in the literature, and as you go through the text, it'll talk about that sentence quite a few times, so it's an important one to understand.